and then another part, the box is checked no. So why that differs, whether she told different officers something, different or what. But that's the only real thing that's been called into question, I believe, as far as where we stand today. As far as how often, based on this questionnaire, the answers on this questionnaire, how often maybe she should have been checked on, or if suicide watch should have been implemented, we still don't have clear answers on that. They did say that she wasn't checked on often enough. Like I said, it was 90 minutes before, from the last time they checked her to the time that they found her dead. And evidently that was too long, especially being that she was in a cell alone, I guess, regardless of that fact.
My thanks to both my reporter guests, Alana, as well as Sinjin. Part of the problem for law enforcement and the general public as well is understanding mental health and mental illness. And our main story, the Mental Health Channel, aims to broaden our collective understanding with its online channel launched just this May. And the story behind the Mental Health Channel is both tragic and compelling.
Everybody knew we needed something like this. I'm talking from Dr. Insel and the late Senator Kennedy to the the NAMI caseworker. My name is Jeff Fraley. I am a co-founder and executive producer for the Mental Health Channel, which is a new online channel dedicated to original mental health programming, available 24/7 on the web, 365.
And Jeff, again, thank you so much for agreeing to the interview and joining me today. I think what you're doing is absolutely phenomenal. We've talked before we got going with the interview in earnest about sort of the common vision that we share for moving forward into the space of media and production with the issues of mental health, mental wellness, mental illness. I want to drill down and give folks an idea of where you come from and how you come to this. If anybody goes to the website, mentalhealthchannel.tv, and I encourage everyone listening to do that, it is phenomenal. It is exquisite. It's elegant, but it's not too heavy. They're short, mini documentaries. I am personally getting very much into Crack Up Austin. That is hilarious. But before we get down into the weeds about the programming itself, talk to folks about you, your background. You've been doing documentaries for decades now, and how you got from there to here.
I have been in film production since 1996. Started a company called Trinity Films Corporation with my business partner, and who is co-founder and executive producer and managing director of the Mental Health Channel. So we've been working together now for almost 19 years, and mainly broadcast and theatrical documentary. Harry Lynch, again, the co-founder and other executive producer, in I think it was 2002, we lost his stepfather to suicide. And it was awful. This is one of the most amazing men you'd ever meet, and incredibly gregarious, never met a stranger. And he just got sudden depression in his later 60s, and a bad mix of antidepressants at the same time, which I don't even want to mention the names or anything like that. But a lot of those incidents ended up in a murder-suicide. They now know not to mix certain chemical cocktails, right?
Yeah.
And so, but we decided at that time we wanted to do something on Frontline because, like most, James, when we have a tragedy like that, we were looking to blame somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we wanted to, what little we knew, we blamed it all on pharmaceuticals, right? The pharmaceutical companies, and it's big pharma. And so we ended up kind of going down the road on that, and it didn't work because of some ongoing litigation from these exact cases that I just mentioned, that, there was kind of some conflicts of interest. And so, but it was in our mind, we have to do something. But in 2008, my sister, I got a call. She's in Arizona, divorced from her husband, but out there with her kids. And I got a call that she was in some sort of psychotic state. And you got to remember, I'm like every newbie in mental health. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
Pretty much, you know? We didn't know anything. And my sister had had a history of alcohol and drug abuse throughout, basically from her teenage years on. And so my family comes from, a lot of folks are big in recovery in my family and are speakers in the recovery circuit, you know, and so we just thought, like, you know, get to a 12-step program, treat your stuff, and move on down the road. Let's go. You know, you can turn your life around, as we know in addiction. I'm sure you have friends. I have many friends, you know. Well, we weren't dealing with that, but we didn't know that. You know, those were just her drug and alcohol abuse were just symptomatic of the underlying diseases. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people come to it that way. Well, certainly my experience as well, given the tragedies in my own family and my own experience, where you were just caught completely unprepared, and it's seems to be compounded. The unsettling nature of that seems to be compounded by the fact that we think of ourselves as pretty capable people. You know, we're fairly bright individuals.
That's right.
We can figure stuff out, right?
Yeah, but you're right. It's like my entire family was unprepared for what happened, and she had gone into an urgent psychiatric care facility. This is in Maricopa County. Was released less than the 72 hours hold. They released her while essentially she was still psychotic. It was an intern, a sophomore in college, who was studying to be a physician assistant, assessed her release.
Wow. Wow.
That's public information, but I'm not going to give names, and I want to protect my sister's privacy. And so I learned a lot, but basically they dropped her off without shoes or her keys on a 108-degree day in Arizona, and less than 30 minutes after being dropped off, she had killed her neighbor with whom she had no connection. As you said, you talk about hitting a wall as a family and loved ones. I mean, it was just, it's hard to describe, you know. I mean, and my parents were away on their 45th wedding anniversary and a well-deserved trip. And, you know, we at first, the ex-brother-in-law, I still consider him my brother-in-law. He's an amazing man, he's an amazing father, and had to live through this, you know. But we didn't want to bother my parents because we've been through this enough times with prescription arrests. You know, we just thought it's just another thing that's causing all this pain and destruction in our family, right?
Yeah.
You know? And it wasn't until that I asked the gentleman that worked at this facility, I called to check on her and said, well, okay, what drugs or alcohol are in her system? You know, with thinking, James, there's 100% it's going to come back something.
Right.
And he said nothing. I said, check that again. And he said, no drugs or alcohol in her system. And it was that moment that I was illuminated for the first time. I was 38, I guess, at that time, that, hey, we're not dealing with addiction.
Wow. Well, man, let me just say, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I can't imagine. I'm without words, man.
And by the way, I will make some jokes because we do believe that, you know, you have to laugh in these situations, these things. But we were, you know, when we were in the midst of it that year, I said, well, you know, there's just no book down at Barnes & Noble or on the web that says, hey, my sister just killed someone. What do I do now?
Yeah.
You know,
big time.
There's just nothing out there. So and particularly something like this, she's still alive, but yet she's still extremely psychotic. It's like a living funeral, you know? But they're not. We didn't really get to say goodbye. It was just kind of the brain took over. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And to some extent, and certainly, you know, you have to be glad for your sister to be alive. But as you said, and in my experience before my mom died, and not to compare the two by any means, but just from the analogous loss of somebody, she had Alzheimer's. She's still alive, but she's not there anymore. Very similar.
Yeah. It really is.
Yeah.
You know, Parkinsonian patients the same way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But anyway, it was I knew she didn't need to go to jail. This seems so clear-cut to me as, getting not reasoned by guilty of insanity, or in Arizona, it's specifically called guilty except insane. GEI. That's the Arizona. Okay. And really what it is, James, it's just a trick of semantics. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Voters don't like not guilty by reason of insanity. That person killed somebody. That person did something. Well, and it actually even goes back in Arizona to an old case. I'm sure you'll remember this as an attorney, but this is 80s, I think. There was a case in Arizona where a guy killed his wife, I believe, and claimed that he had a temporary psychosis to the ingestion of junk food.
Right.
You remember this?
Yes.
The Twinkie defense.
Yes.
And that guy did walk out of the court. So Arizona changed their GEI law, they're not guilty by reason of insanity wording and everything, to guilty except insane. And Arizona is interesting because I'm from Texas, but a lot of Arizona's criminal views and towards mental health it makes Texas look like Paris or Amsterdam compared.
Yeah.
It's real conservative.
Yeah, the fear born out of that scenario where someone commits a heinous act, claims insanity, feigning insanity, faking it, and therefore gets to walk out of court, which is not what happens, even if you're found not guilty by reason of insanity. But again, the public perception, and as a matter of fact, the show I did last week was on that very issue with an attorney out of Duquesne University who studies the intersection of law and behavioral health. But we'll talk about that next time. But my point is that I understand.
We're going to have a lot to talk about. We're going to have to do.
We got a lot to talk about. We got a lot to talk about, and hopefully on the mental health channel, and I'll take care of that part. But anyway, but I understand that is the reality in a lot of states around the country. That they've compromised because there's a public distaste and disdain born out of not really understanding what this thing is.
Look, district attorneys have to get reelected. And how do they get reelected? By pleasing their constituents.
Yeah.
And those constituents don't have all the information, so they literally just, when they accept these plea deals, in essence what they're saying is we have enough evidence to accept this to defend our position with our constituency so we can get reelected.
Yeah. And the sad reality is that as a former prosecutor, the prosecutors themselves don't understand. The DAs don't understand. The defense attorneys don't understand, the public defenders, private counsel, nor do the bench officers, the judges, truly understand. And hopefully what you're doing, what I'm doing, what we're all in this together doing, will be able to make some headway into helping them get a true, accurate understanding of what this thing is so we can get better rules.
So I came to mental health, unfortunately, the way most people who become passionate or become some sort of advocate of mental health, from a personal tragedy or experience in my family.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as you know, and everybody knows, I think everybody can see it with a lot of the advertising in the media, the Holmes kid in Colorado. There's a lot of media attention driven towards these tragedies, but, that's not the whole story.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And we know some of these guys, Virginia Tech and Colorado, these guys were in a system that failed them, No matter what you feel about it, I'm not belittling anything of these tragedies, but they were preventable.
Sure. I mean, we can go back to your home state of Texas. Andrea Yates is a classic example.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, severe postpartum. I mean, she's on every side. I mean, yes. Yeah. But it's out there everywhere. Everybody has something. But I just finally kind of fundamentally figured out that no one is talking about this.
Exactly.
On a major level, but because the reality is the way we view and treat the mentally ill in our country is counterintuitive. I mean, we wait for the wheels to come off and then a massive wake of destruction behind to then get help, as you know. And I'm not saying this to the audience, but that's, you know, it's the equivalent to knowing